There on your, yes. Today we'd like to welcome Stuart Shapiro from the MITRE Corporation. Stuart has been working in security, privacy, especially privacy, for quite some time. Before joining MITRE, he was specializing in healthcare privacy, working in a company in that area. Before that, Stuart spent some time in academia, most recently at RPI. Stuart has a PhD from Carnegie Mellon, and to prove that he is no stranger to the Midwest, his undergraduate work was at Northwestern. So, Stu?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I will apologize for my voice. I'm just on the tail end of a cold, so I know it sounds nasally. I may take a break every now and then to have a coughing fit. Sorry, please bear with me. All right, well, I'm pleased to be here, particularly since I actually grew up in South Bend. So Indiana and Purdue are no strangers to me, although I suppose I should admit that my father was a professor at Indiana University at South Bend, so if you want to throw rotten fruit and vegetables at this point, that's perfectly fine. Or you can wait till the end of the presentation and throw those. All right, well, first and foremost, I want to emphasize the fact that there were a lot of other people involved in developing what I'm going to be talking about today. And I was just one of them. And in particular, because I'm going to be emphasizing the security part of the framework, Deb Bedeau and Rich Graubart in particular did a lot of the heavy lifting on that, and so I want to duly acknowledge that, lest anybody walk out of the room thinking that this was basically my show. All right, so this is what I'm going to cover, and please, if you have questions or comments or exclamations of dismay, please feel free to interrupt. I'm going to talk about why, I'm going to talk about what, I'm going to talk about how, and then I'm going to finish up with a couple of concrete examples, or at least somewhat concrete, so hopefully you get a better understanding or appreciation of how this all works. So, why have we developed this thing we call the MITRE Information Policy Framework? Well, before I get to that, I need to tell you a little bit about MITRE's environment. For those of you who don't know, MITRE is a not-for-profit corporation that operates 3 federally funded research and development centers. We do contract technical research and consulting principally, although not exclusively, for various parts of the federal government. And yes, that includes the usual suspects, DoD, the intelligence community, but it also includes the civil side. We do stuff for the FAA, we do stuff for VA, for HHS, what have you. We have about 6,000 employees in 2 main campuses, one in the D.C. area, one up in Bedford, Massachusetts, because that's where Hanscom Air Force Base is, and that's where the Air Force Electronic Systems Center is. We have about 70 site offices around the world. Most of them are in the U.S., as you might expect, but because we support DoD and the intelligence community, we go where they go, and so we do have site offices in other countries. And we have a lot of people who are what I call embedded in sponsor organizations. And what I mean by that is they spend most, if not all, of their time actually on location at the sponsor site. We refer to our government customers as sponsors. It's part of the whole FFRDC ethos, just in case you're wondering. So we have a lot of people who spend most or all of their time at the sponsor location, getting back to MITRE physically very infrequently, if at all. And so the bottom line is we're a big organization. We're a highly dispersed and distributed organization. We're a highly mobile organization, and that makes for a fairly complex policy environment. So to give you some background where this thing came from, depending on your perspective, it's either a brainchild or a demon spawn. over the last several years, there was a perceived need for greater sponsor access to MITRE information resources. Sponsors getting direct access to our intranet, being able to get materials, being able to check on the availability of staff. All that actually has some interesting privacy issues attached to it. As I noted, as virtually everybody is these days, we're a highly mobile workforce. People work from their homes, people work at sponsor locations, people work on the road all the time. And we were increasingly interested in digitalizing our work processes. So rather than doing things by filling out forms, doing things electronically wherever possible, using digital signature instead of pen and ink, all that kind of stuff. And so what this pointed us toward as we were evolving our new and improved MITRE enterprise architecture was greater integration with sponsors and partners, an impetus to manage our business processes and our work processes digitally, and to enhance collaboration, enhance sharing. Well, of course, we all know sharing is the big thing these days, both the private sector, especially in the public sector, post 9/11, share. People aren't sharing information enough. You got to share, you got to collaborate. Okay, all well and good, but greater sponsor access to MITRE information resources can lead to potentially unauthorized access to information. You don't want sponsors getting access to information that they have no business having access to, and that could include information about MITRE itself or MITRE staff. It could also include information about other MITRE sponsors who don't want other MITRE sponsors to have that information. Sharing becomes very complex in an environment where decisions are no longer binary. Because despite all the rhetoric, it's really not the case that whereas before we didn't share and now we're sharing, rather it's in that murky gray area in between. You want to share appropriately, you want to make sure the right people have the right information at the right time for the right purposes. That's a lot more difficult than just saying yes or no. And so that engenders complexity. And then, of course, there's all that mobility, including home use. Somebody connects to the MITRE intranet via their home computer to check their email. Unbeknownst to them, their teenage son or daughter has inadvertently downloaded some malware onto their system, and suddenly we've got malware running through our intranet and contaminating our systems, and that's not a good thing. So the motivation. Well, a lot of what I've just said really goes to the notion of this is a changing world. I should say that we've been working on this thing for about 3 years now. So, I mean, even going back then, it was clear the world was drastically changing. In particular, with respect to the need for sharing information and infrastructure, while at the same time maintaining security, maintaining privacy. Also dealing with the need for technological convergence, for interoperability, the fact that we have new threats cropping up all the time, including if you're talking about cyber or information warfare, the deliberate corruption of information. In some cases, it's actually potentially more effective rather than bringing down an adversary's systems, corrupt the critical information that they're making decisions based on. Well, when we looked around at our internal environment at MITRE, what we saw standing next to this changing world was a situation characterized by piecemeal policy development. A lot of what we called point policies. When a specific issue got raised, a policy got written, it got instantiated. So, specific types of information under in a specific form should be handled so-and-so. Information with these characteristics gets handled in such a way. If you're using this technology or that technology, then you have to do this, that, or the other thing. But they were isolated policies in the sense they were generated one by one. Oh, we've now got PDAs. Well, we better have a PDA policy. Well, here's HIPAA, the health insurance Portability and Accountability Act with the privacy and security rules. Oh, well, we've got to deal with that too. So we've been doing this stuff on a relatively ad hoc way.